Hey everybody, it's Alex, the founder and CEO at Motoroso.com, and in this video we're going to be doing a step-by-step how-to installation guide for the new Alcon Big Brake kit for the full-size Ford Bronco. We made a separate product spotlight video where we talk about all the features and functionality of this kit. We'll put a link to that right over here. Now after the installation, we're going to be taking it out and doing an after performance test. We already did our before test in stock trim, and now we're going to show you how well it performs. But before we do that, we'll show you how to install them. But just a quick note about this. We have still not gotten our lift kit, and we still have not upgraded to our 37-inch tires. So we're going to be doing this with the stock wheel size from the base Bronco, which I think is somewhere around 32 inches. Of course, these are not going to be representative of the braking distances that you would have with the Sasquatch with 35s or anything bigger like the 37s that we're going to be on. This is just going to give you a baseline for what a base Bronco performance is going to be. All right, so the installation's fairly straightforward. You can do it in your driveway with a buddy. It gets a little bit messy with the brake fluid, but otherwise a very straightforward install. Let's show you how to do it.
To start, you'll need to get your Bronco up on jack stands and remove your front wheels. Next, remove the 6mm bolt holding the ABS sensor in place on the spindle and remove the ABS sensor from the spindle. You might need to use a little flathead screwdriver to pry it up. Remove the brake line mounting bracket by removing the single 10mm bolt. Now remove the two 15mm caliper mounting bolts and remove the caliper, setting it aside carefully to make sure not to tug on the brake line. Next, remove the two 19mm bracket mounting bolts and remove the caliper mounting bracket. Make sure to set these bolts somewhere safe because you're going to need to reuse them when you mount the bracket from Alcon. With the bracket removed, you can slide the rotor off. You might need to use a mallet to loosen it. For good measure, we clean the surface with brake clean and a steel brush. Apply Loctite to the OEM bracket mounting bolts and reuse them to install the Alcon bracket. The bracket is marked with the side that faces the disc, and it's very important to make sure this is oriented properly. Torque these bolts to 111 foot-pounds of torque. You're now ready to place the rotor. Make sure to bend or remove the heat shield if needed to avoid making contact with the rotor. With the supplied hardware, slide a washer over each bolt and apply Loctite before mounting the caliper. To install the caliper, simply slide the caliper over the rotor and loosely install using the supplied washers and bolts. Now we're ready to transfer the brake line over to the new caliper. To do this, carefully remove the banjo bolt and let some of the fluid drain. Then feed the Alcon supplied banjo bolt through the brake line with a copper crush washer on each side. Being careful not to drip brake fluid on the new caliper, transfer the brake line over and install the banjo bolt supplied by Alcon. You're going to need to make sure that this brake line is oriented properly because the hard portion of this brake line bends away from the caliper. Torque the banjo bolt to 26 foot-pounds. Then fully torque the caliper mounting bolts to 108 foot-pounds. Now it's time to reattach the brake line bracket. If you reinstall the bracket in its original position, the brake line will bend tightly near the caliper. To avoid this, we drilled an additional hole about 1 inch lower on the bracket and then shifted it up and mounted it. This gave enough room to alleviate that stress from the line. With the brake line in place, you can reinstall your ABS sensor. Pull some extra slack through from the clip to make sure that this line is loose. Repeat this process on the other side, and then you're ready to bleed your brakes.
Okay, as you can see, very straightforward installation process, a little bit messy with that fluid. Next up, it's time to bleed your brakes. Now, we're not going to do a full how to bleed brakes tutorial in this video. If you want that, there's other YouTube videos. Maybe we'll find one and put a link to that in the description over here. But it is a fairly normal process, but there is one exception, okay? On the Bronco, they have some sort of electric brake assist, and the car will turn on and have that on as soon as you open the door. So what we recommend doing is leaving the doors open and letting the car go dead, and don't close those at any point because you'll fire it back up. If during the process of bleeding the brakes that electric assist comes on, you'll hear it. It makes like an electric whirring sound and you can hear it. moving fluid through the system. If that happens, then the bleeding process is not going to work. So go ahead and let the car sit with the doors open for 5 or 10 minutes, and then it'll kind of turn itself off again. You can go back to doing a normal brake bleeding process like usual. You're going to need somebody to work the pedal, pump up the pressure. Then as you break the bleeder valve free, the pedal will go to the floor, tighten that valve and open it back up. It sucks fluid down into the system. So another note about this, each caliper has 2 bleeding screws, one at the bottom and one at the top of the caliper. Air rises. So start with the lower bleed screw first on each side and then move to the upper bleed screw. Also, always start with the caliper on the furthest side away from the master cylinder. So you're going to start on the passenger side bottom bleed screw and then go to the top, then come over to the driver side, do the bottom and then do the top. And then we recommend doing that at least 1 or 2 more times completely. While you're doing this though, make sure that you don't run out of fluid in your reservoir. Keep an open container next to the reservoir and keep topping it up to make sure you don't suck any air into the system from the top. Okay, so that should be pretty much all you need to know about bleeding the brakes. Next, we got to talk about the bedding in procedure. All new brakes need to be bedded in. This means they need to be run through a heat cycle so that the rotor and the pad mate to one another, and it kind of cooks the pad and makes the pad actually perform. And this has to go through a cycle specified by Alcon, and that cycle is moderate braking pressure from 60 miles an hour down to 30 miles per hour. Don't come to a complete stop. Accelerate right back up for about 15 seconds, 30 seconds, and then brake from 60 to 30 again, moderate pressure. By the 10th time you do that, the heat will have built up in that rotor and that pad, curing it to each other. And then after that has had a chance to come back and cool down, the brakes will be bedded in. Now they say that they're not fully bedded in until you've done about 120 to 200 miles of normal street driving. But we're going to go ahead and bed in our brakes, then let the vehicle cool down. Then we're going to go do our braking test. We figure after the bedding in process, that'll probably be about 90% of the way to the performance. So it should be a really good indicator. So we're going to go do our bedding in process right now, and then we'll do our braking distance test.
To prove the increase in performance on this big brake kit, we decided to do a couple of stopping tests. And of course, we did stopping tests with the stock brakes first. Now we found a place where we could go 60 miles an hour and set the cruise control, and then we used this sign as a braking marker. We tried to brake as hard as we could while managing the ABS, and in our first 2 tests with stock brakes, we braked at 118 feet and 119 feet. Then with the Alcon BBK installed, our distances dropped down to 110 feet and 111 feet.
All right, we hope you found that video helpful. We are so stoked to have this new Alcon BBK on our Bronco. If you'd like to buy this brake set, click this link right over here or the link in the description. That'll take you over to Motoroso.com. You can reach us there on live chat, or you can call us toll free at 833-MOTOROSO anytime. With all this extra braking power, if you're ready to make more horsepower, check out the VR Tune piggyback module. We made 50 horsepower over stock, an additional 60 foot-pounds of torque, and we proved it on the dyno, and it's a 5-minute install. It's a great upgrade to make more juice. Subscribe to our channel for all of our upcoming videos, and thanks for watching.